The Call of the Ancestors, a journey of connection and belonging. I grew up listening to my grandmother's stories. Sitting in her rocking chair, with her wrinkled hands resting on her lap, she narrated our family's memories, as if she were recounting a legend. Her voice carried a weight, as if each word was a prayer, and I listened with reverence, sensing that I was in the presence of something much greater than I could comprehend. My grandmother always said that our spirituality wasn't just a belief. It was a thread that connected us to our ancestors. She taught me that our forebears left their marks on the world not in stones or monuments, but in the land we walk on, the trees we plant, and most importantly within ourselves. One night, when I was 15, I dreamed of a woman I had never seen before. She was walking through a dense forest, holding a fiery lantern in her hands. Her eyes glowed, and she looked at me, as if she had known me for a long time. When I woke up, I ran to tell my grandmother. She listened calmly, and at the end, told me that this woman could be my great-great-grandmother, a healer who lived in distant lands. Ancestors visit us in dreams, she said, not to frighten us, but to guide us. From that day on, I began to notice their presence in small details. A smell of herbs in the air, when no one had been cooking. A bird that perched on the window ledge and stared at me intently, as if trying to convey a message. Or that strange feeling of déjà vu when walking through a place I'd never visited. My grandmother said these were the energies of our ancestors surrounding us, reminding us that we are never alone. Once, I decided to explore this connection further. My grandmother took me through a simple but profound ritual in our backyard. She taught me how to prepare a small altar with objects representing our history. A stone my great-grandfather brought from a trip, a piece of fabric embroidered by my great-grandmother, and a small jar of soil from where they were buried. We sat silently before the altar as my grandmother murmured words in an ancient language I didn't understand, but which resonated within me like a forgotten melody. She lit a candle, and asked me to close my eyes and speak to my ancestors. "Say what's in your heart," she whispered. At first I felt strange, as if I were speaking to emptiness. But gradually, the words began to flow. I thanked them for the strength I felt in difficult moments, asked for guidance with decisions that seemed too heavy to bear alone, and promised to honor the lessons passed down to me. That night, I had another dream. This time, it wasn't just the woman with the lantern. They were all there, men and women from various generations, gathered around a bonfire. They looked at me with kindness, and one of them, who seemed to be my great-grandfather, placed his hand on my shoulder and said, "You are the continuation of all this. Everything we are is in you, and everything you will become will be a part of us." I woke up crying, but it wasn't sadness. It was as if, for the first time, I truly understood the depth of what it meant to belong. From then on, I began to see spirituality and ancestry not as something external, but as an intrinsic part of who I am. Today, whenever I'm in doubt or feel lost, I sit before the altar, light a candle and close my eyes. And even if I don't see them, I feel their presence with me, like an invisible embrace, giving me the courage to move forward. Over time, I began to incorporate my grandmother's teachings into my daily life. It wasn't just about the rituals. It was about recognizing my ancestors' presence in every little thing. The way the wind rustled the trees reminded me that they too had weathered storms. The smell of bread baking in the kitchen connected me to the hands that for generations shaped life with effort and love. One of the most transformative experiences happened when I decided to visit the place where my family's story began. It was a small village surrounded by mountains and rivers. I went there alone, carrying only a backpack and a journal, eager to feel what my grandmother described as the spirit of the land. When I arrived, I felt an inexplicable peace. The mountains seemed to watch over me, and the sound of the river was like an ancient song I didn't know I knew. I walked to the house where my great-great-grandmother had lived. The walls were in ruins, but the energy of the place was palpable. I sat on the ground and closed my eyes, feeling connected to everything around me. While sitting there, something extraordinary happened. I felt a gentle breeze touch my face, and for a moment, it seemed like invisible hands rested on my shoulders, just as in the dream I had years ago. It was as if they were saying, "You found your way back." I spent the rest of the day exploring the village, talking to the locals, and listening to stories that confirmed the fragments my grandmother had shared with me. Every tale, every detail, was like a piece of a puzzle helping me understand my own existence. When I returned home, something inside me had changed. I was no longer just someone trying to understand their ancestry. I had become a living part of it. My perspective on life had also transformed. I began to give thanks for everything, for the food, the day, the rain. And whenever challenges arose, I remembered my great-grandfather's words in the dream. Everything we are is in you. Today, I pass my grandmother's teachings on to the younger members of the family. When we gather, I tell the stories, teach the rituals, and show how our ancestors still live within us. And whenever someone asks me why I do this, I answer with the words my grandmother taught me, because remembering is living twice, for ourselves and for them.